In the next few minutes, you're going to learn 3 tips from Saint Augustine of Hippo on how to actually improve your fundraising. Hi, I'm Brice Sokolowski, the founder of CatholicFundraiser.net, a website that's completely dedicated to helping Catholics just like you with their fundraising. Whether you're starting out, you're trying to find new innovative ways of raising funds, or you're trying to increase your overall funds, you are in the right place. Before we dive in, I want to make sure that you download absolutely for free the 10 commandments to Catholic fundraising. These are 10 things that I highly recommend every Catholic do when fundraising because, well, these tips, these steps have helped me. They've helped other Catholics who have included their thoughts into this guide, and it's been downloaded by thousands of Catholics. So I highly recommend that you download absolutely for free the 10 commandments to Catholic fundraising. The link is right below. Okay, Saint Augustine, he shouldn't need an introduction. You probably already know who he is. 4th century bishop of the Catholic Church, doctor of the church, saint, overall probably one of the wisest men ever to walk the earth. With that said, if he's one of the wisest people, I would have thought, well, maybe he left some type of suggestions, recommendations on how to fundraise. And he has. One of his very good friends, I believe his name was Placidius. If you see me look down or you hear me pause, it's because I'm looking at my notes, which you can access. The link is going to be right below. Yes, Placidius wrote a biography, Life of Augustine, of Saint Augustine. And in it, he talks about some of the practical day-to-day things that Saint Augustine did. And within these day-to-day things, he offers kind of a little bit of insight of what I thought would be helpful with fundraising. So here are 3 tips written by Placidius about Saint Augustine on funds, church revenue, and how to move forward as a Catholic. So the first one is not to get too attached to possessions and donations. When a fellow clergyman criticized St. Augustine on his selling of things, of use of things, well, he said, look, if you don't like what I'm doing, I'm just going to hand it back. And I don't really need it. And I definitely value our relationship, our friendship, much more than these possessions and these donations. So he was happy to say, look, I don't really need this stuff, which I think is a very valuable lesson for us today, is that we get so attached to our possessions, and sometimes we get possessions or donations from sources that might not be good, or we use them in a non-prudent way, and we have to, I believe, be a little bit more open to what other people have to say. It's not to say everybody, not just anybody, you should be listening to, but if somebody is wise and is somewhat maybe associated with your organization and raises a voice, investigate it, look into it, and maybe they're right. And if that's the case, take the actions similar to St. Augustine. The second recommendation from St. Augustine is he knew his numbers. He knew his accounts. So he didn't manage them himself. He actually got experts to do that, but he was very active in knowing what was going on. He would ask for an account of what's happening, how many funds do we have, what happened over the year. And so he took this responsibility upon himself to know his numbers. And I see very often with nonprofits, directors, leaders, boards, they don't know their numbers. They think, well, that's the fundraiser, that's the accountant. Take St. Augustine's approach is that you have to be responsible at the end of the day of what's happening, and you have to just simply know what's going on. So just don't simply outsource it and say, look, speak to my accountant, speak to the fundraiser, speak to these people, they know it, I'm just involved in this. St. Augustine, he didn't do that. So take the approach of St. Augustine and be active with knowing your numbers. And the third recommendation from St. Augustine is he actually used his funds. He was not afraid of just going off and sometimes selling things, using his funds, where his focus was the poor, and he had no problem selling things, using funds, even if, people thought you're doing it way too much. But he recognized that the mission always comes first, not trying to, have some type of, I guess, reserve and funds. Now, there's not a lot of information about this, so I can only assume that what St. Augustine is talking about is overabundance, because they do talk about in this book selling of vestments and beautiful things. St. Ambrose, it says, did the same thing, and people got upset. And St. Augustine's response was, look, our first response, our first mission is to help the poor and help people. So that's what we're going to do. If we have an overabundance and we don't have enough funds, and this is a very, very interesting part. If we don't have enough funds, well, we got to sell what we have. We got to use what we have in order to continue the mission. And this really jolted people. And also St. Augustine said, look, we need more funds. We don't have enough to continue our mission. So he was not ashamed of asking. And if people didn't give, well, he just said, look, I'm going to be selling this stuff because we have to keep moving forward. I cannot be paused because people are not donating, are not serving their fellow man, if you could call it that. We're not doing what we need to. So he wasn't sitting on the sideline saying, well, we don't have enough funds to do A, B, and C, and well, we can't really sell these things. Obviously, selling things, if certain people criticized him for it, he didn't keep them. He just said, look, I'm just going to give them away because you know what? If we don't have the funds and I can't sell these possessions to do my mission, then I'm just going to move forward and give things back and tell people, look, if you don't want to donate, things are going to happen. We have to move forward. We're not pausing. Okay, I hope these have been very helpful tips from St. Augustine. I found them very useful. If you like this video, if you like the audio, please share this with a fellow Catholic that you think would benefit from this help, and let them know that CatholicFundraiser.net is available for them and helping them with their fundraising. God love you.